$5. That's what the boy's small hand held out, creased, sweaty, and trembling, as if it could buy justice. He didn't flinch. Even as he offered it to the man, everyone else crossed the street to avoid. No one ever approached Oscar Rosa. Not unless they had a death wish. And yet, here he was, a boy no older than 9, standing alone on a gray Manhattan sidewalk, reaching out with a wad of bills like he was handing over a sandwich. But it wasn't money that stunned Oscar. It was the question that came next. What could a child possibly ask a man like Oscar Rosa, kingpin, executioner, ghostmaker, for $5? Would you have listened or walked away? Before we dive in, where are you watching from, and what kind of story do you want to see next? Drop it in the comments. And if stories like this pull you in and don't let go, go ahead, hit subscribe. I have another powerful one coming tomorrow. And you really don't want to miss it. Now, let's get into today's story. $5. That's what the small hand clutched inside a worn envelope. As 9-year-old Alvin Alexander stood at the edge of Riverside Park, his gaze fixed on the man everyone in the city whispered about but never named aloud. He knew Oscar Rosa's reputation from overheard conversations, knew he wasn't someone a child should approach, or even acknowledge. The late afternoon air hung thick with the scent of freshly cut grass and distant car exhaust as the sun began its descent, casting elongated shadows across the park's cracked walking paths. Families gathered their children, joggers completed final laps, and the ordinary rhythm of city life continued, oblivious to the extraordinary moment about to unfold. Oscar Rosa sat alone on a weathered wooden bench near the fountain, his charcoal suit somehow immaculate despite the summer humidity, his presence commanding respect even in complete stillness. No bodyguards flanked him. No security detail lingered in the shadows. Yet an invisible boundary seemed to exist around him, a zone that strangers instinctively avoided without understanding why. Identify weakness. Exploit it. Control the outcome. The mantra had built his empire from street corners to boardrooms, a philosophy that turned enemies into examples and loyalty into currency. Today, ironically, he was the exposed one, a calculated risk he permitted himself only once each month, away from the suffocating demands of his organization and the weight of decisions that ended lives or spared them. A cluster of pigeons pecked at scattered breadcrumbs near his feet, their cooing providing a mundane soundtrack to thoughts that were anything but peaceful. Oscar checked his phone, an encrypted device worth more than most people's monthly rent, and mentally calculated how much longer he could indulge in this dangerous luxury of solitude. The park had become his confessional over the years, a neutral space where the relentless chess game of power and survival temporarily paused. Here, surrounded by children on swings and elderly couples feeding ducks, he could almost remember the version of himself that existed before the first kill, before the first betrayal, before the last shred of innocence was traded for survival. He watched a young father push his daughter on a swing, her delighted squeals carrying across the playground. Such uncomplicated joy, a sensation his lifestyle had long ago made impossible. The brief melancholy this observation triggered was shattered by awareness of a small figure hovering at the edge of his peripheral vision, radiating an intensity that didn't belong to childhood. Time seemed to crystallize as Alvin Alexander summoned every ounce of courage he possessed, fingers tightening around the envelope that represented weeks of saved allowance, skipped lunches, and carefully hoarded coins. His worn sneakers, 2 sizes too small and held together with duct tape, carried him forward with halting steps, each one requiring more bravery than he knew he had. The legendary crime boss had faced armed rivals without flinching, had negotiated with cartel leaders while smiling over wine. Yet something in this child's unflinching gaze unsettled him in a way violence never had. Perhaps it was the absence of fear where terror should rightfully exist, or the grim determination that seemed impossibly mature for such a young face. Oscar noticed the boy immediately, his predator's instinct missing nothing even in moments of manufactured calm. Something in the child's purposeful approach made him dismiss thoughts about shipments, territory disputes, and the endless machinery of his criminal enterprise. The boy's appearance narrated its own tragedy. The faded jacket hanging loose on thin shoulders, the barely healed cut above his left eyebrow, the eyes that had witnessed things no child should ever see. Knowledge lived in that gaze. Terrible, intimate knowledge of violence and fear. Alvin stopped exactly 4 feet from the bench, maintaining a careful distance that suggested both respect and caution. His breath came quick and shallow, but his voice emerged steady when he finally spoke. "Excuse me, sir," he said, the formality almost heartbreaking in its childish attempt at professionalism. "Are you Mr. Rosa?" The question hung between them, audacious and perilous in the golden evening light. Oscar considered lying. sending the boy away with a harsh word, as he would any stranger foolish enough to breach his privacy. Instead, curiosity overrode instinct, and he tilted his head slightly. A gesture that neither confirmed nor denied, but somehow invited continuation despite every rule he'd established for himself. Alvin stepped closer then, extending both hands with the envelope held between trembling fingers. "I need help, sir," he stated simply, no tears or theatrical pleading coloring his request. "And I can pay." The absurdity of this child offering payment to one of the city's most feared men almost triggered something like amusement, but the raw desperation in those young eyes killed any smile before it could form. Whatever drove this boy here was no trivial matter. That much was evident from the rigid set of his small shoulders, the way he stood as if prepared to either fight or flee, depending on the response. A church bell somewhere distant marked 5 o'clock, the sound echoing across the park as pigeons scattered from a passing cyclist. The contrast between them couldn't be more absolute. Darkness and innocence facing off across an impossible divide, predator and prey reversing their ancient roles. "What kind of help costs $5? Oscar asked finally, his deep voice pitched low enough that only the boy could hear. The question wasn't mockery, but genuine curiosity, as if this child's answer might contain some truth he'd spent decades trying to avoid. Alvin's fingers tightened momentarily on the envelope before he extended it again, his chin lifting slightly in a gesture of pride that reminded Oscar of himself at that age, before the world taught him that pride was a luxury the poor couldn't afford. "It's all I have," the boy said simply, his voice cracking slightly. "But I think it's enough for what I need." With the expertise born from decades of reading people, detecting lies, measuring desperation, calculating leverage, Oscar accepted the envelope. He noted the care with which it had been sealed, each edge aligned perfectly, the tape applied with meticulous precision. Such attention to detail spoke of desperation, of something precious protected within fragile paper. Alvin watched him open it with the intensity of someone whose entire world balanced on this moment, his small chest barely moving as he held his breath. Inside lay a carefully folded $5 bill and a note written in the careful handwriting of a child trying desperately to appear grown-up. The letters wobbled in places, revealing the effort required to form each word. "Please make my uncle go away. He hurts my mom and my baby sister. We can't tell anyone because he says he'll hurt us worse. I saved this money for you. Please help us." The simplicity of the request hit Oscar like a physical blow, momentarily stealing breath from lungs that had forgotten how to feel shock. In his world, problems were solved with calculated violence, strategic intimidation, and ruthless efficiency. Clean, professional, emotionless. But this child's plea ignited something he'd believed long extinguished, something dangerously close to conscience. "How did you find me?" he asked, his tone softer than before, genuine concern mixing with professional caution. The question mattered. Children shouldn't know how to locate men like him, shouldn't understand the geography of the underworld. Alvin's gaze didn't waver as he answered, his voice steady despite the fear Oscar could now see trembling beneath the surface. "I heard my uncle talking on the phone once. He said, Oscar Rosa owns this city. Even cops are scared of him." His small hands twisted together in front of him. "I thought, maybe he'd be scared of you too." The brutal honesty of that logic was flawless in its childish simplicity. Find the apex predator to eliminate the one hunting you. Oscar felt reluctant respect for the boy's resourcefulness, mixed with something darker at the thought of what circumstances would teach a child such survival strategies. "Your mother doesn't know you're here," Oscar stated rather than asked, already knowing the answer from the furtive way the boy had glanced over his shoulder earlier. Alvin shook his head, confirming the assumption with a small frown that aged his young face by decades. "Mom's always tired now. The medicine makes her sleep. My sister's only 5. She's too little to understand." The unspoken weight in those simple words, the responsibility this child had assumed, the adult decisions he'd been forced to make, stirred something protective in the crime boss that genuinely surprised him. In his world, certain lines were sacred. Children existed beyond the reach of violence, untouchable even in the bloodiest territorial wars. Those who violated that code didn't live long enough to repeat the mistake. "Where is your uncle now?" Oscar asked, his tone casual, but his mind already shifting gears, mentally deploying resources, planning reconnaissance, identifying vulnerabilities. "At work till 8, Alvin replied with the clinical detachment of a child who'd learned to track an adult's schedule as a matter of survival. "He drives a delivery truck for Morton's." Oscar folded the note carefully, sliding it into his inner jacket pocket rather than returning it. The evidence would be destroyed later, but for now, it felt important to preserve this tangible proof of trust. this contract written in a desperate child's handwriting. "Keep your money," he said, placing the $5 bill back in Alvin's small palm, closing the boy's fingers around it with a gentleness few people knew he possessed. "You've already paid enough." Confusion crossed Alvin's face, his brows drawing together as he tried to understand if this meant rejection or acceptance. "But don't you need payment?" he asked, desperation and logic warring in his young voice. "Some things aren't about money," Oscar replied, surprising himself with the sincerity behind words he'd never expected to speak. In his world, everything had a price. But staring into the hopeful eyes of this child, he recognized that some debts existed beyond monetary calculation. Alvin's shoulders relaxed slightly, the first crack in the armor he'd been wearing. "Will you help us?" he asked directly, no manipulation or tears, just the straightforward question of a child who'd learned that adults rarely kept their promises. Oscar nodded once, a barely perceptible movement that carried the absolute weight of certainty. In that moment, a contract more binding than any legal document formed between the unlikely pair. The crime boss who'd forgotten his humanity, and the desperate child who'd reminded him it still existed. As Alvin disappeared through the park gates, clutching his returned $5 like a talisman, Oscar remained on the bench, staring at nothing. The note burned against his chest like accusation, like opportunity, like redemption he didn't deserve. He hadn't always been this man, the wolf, the shadow king, the name whispered in fear. Once, Oscar Rosa had been someone else entirely. Someone who believed in justice, in protection, in the possibility that good could triumph without compromise. That man died the night he failed to save his sister from men, not unlike the uncle this boy described. That failure built the empire. And now, perhaps, it was time for that empire to serve a different purpose. The drive back to headquarters passed in silence, broken only by the rhythmic thrum of tires against asphalt. Oscar sat in the back of his blacked-out Mercedes, the city lights bleeding past the tinted windows in streaks of gold and red. His driver knew better than to speak. His phone buzzed twice, territory disputes, shipment delays, the endless machinery of criminal enterprise, but Oscar ignored them all. The note in his pocket felt heavier than any weapon he'd ever carried. Weakness is death. That's what Sal Ricci had told him 23 years ago, before putting a gun in 15-year-old Oscar's hand and pointing him toward his first target. You feel sorry for him, you hesitate, you die. Or worse, someone you love dies because you were too soft. Oscar had learned that lesson thoroughly, perhaps too thoroughly. He closed his eyes, and the memories came whether he wanted them or not. Memories he'd spent decades burying under violence and power. San Miguel Street, 1989. 17-year-old Oscar Rosa had crouched behind a dumpster, blood from a split lip dripping onto his stolen jacket. 3 of Ricci's men surrounded him, a test, they'd called it. Prove you're not just another street rat. Prove you can take a beating and come back harder. He'd proven it. Put 2 of them in the hospital and earned the third one's respect with a broken bottle and raw survival instinct. Sal Ricci himself had pulled Oscar to his feet afterward, grinning through broken teeth. You got that hunger, kid. That wolf inside you. We can use that. The wolf had been useful indeed. By 19, Oscar was running collections. By 22, enforcing territory. By 25, eliminating problems that Ricci's diplomacy couldn't solve. Each kill had been easier than the last. Each betrayal more justified. Each line crossed with less hesitation. Emotion is liability. That became his religion. He'd watched men die begging for mercy he'd stopped granting. Watched families torn apart by debts they couldn't pay. Watched the city bend to his will through fear and calculated violence. And he'd felt nothing. Nothing except the cold satisfaction of control. Until the night his sister paid the price for his ascension. The memory hit him like a fist to the chest. Maria Rosa. Sweet, idealistic Maria who'd refused to leave their mother's house even when Oscar begged her to move somewhere safe, somewhere his enemies couldn't find her. I'm not abandoning Mama because you chose this life, she told him, fire in her eyes. You want to be a gangster? Fine. But don't ask me to hide from your consequences. 3 men had kicked in her door on a Tuesday night. Rivals who wanted to send Oscar a message about respecting boundaries. They'd found Maria instead of the drugs they'd been told were hidden there. Bad intelligence, mistaken identity, wrong house. Didn't matter. She'd seen their faces. Oscar found her 2 days later in an abandoned warehouse, throat cut, eyes still open in silent accusation. He'd hunted down every man involved. Made them suffer in ways that became legend in the underworld. But revenge hadn't brought her back. Hadn't erased the fact that she died because of proximity to him. Died because he believed his power could protect her when all it did was paint a target on her back. After that, Oscar stopped pretending he had a soul worth saving. He became the wolf completely, efficient, ruthless, untouchable. No family, no connections, no weakness anyone could exploit. Until a 9-year-old boy handed him a note that read exactly like the letter Maria had written to him days before she died, begging him to help her friend escape an abusive boyfriend. The letter he'd ignored because he was too busy expanding territory into the north side. Oscar's eyes snapped open as the Mercedes pulled into the underground garage. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across concrete pillars marked with territorial graffiti. His empire, built on the bones of everyone he'd failed to save. Would you have done things differently if you could go back? That's what Alvin's eyes had asked without speaking. That's what Maria's ghost whispered every time he closed his eyes. The car door opened. Oscar stepped out, straightening his jacket with automatic precision. But instead of heading upstairs to his office where paperwork and problems awaited, he pulled out his phone and called the one man he trusted with sensitive operations. Marcus, I need you at my office. 5 minutes. Come alone. Marcus Webb appeared 4 minutes later, closing the heavy oak door behind him with the quiet efficiency of a man who'd spent 15 years as Oscar's right hand. Former military, former merc, current lieutenant who'd proven his loyalty through blood and silence. Boss. Marcus settled into the leather chair across from Oscar's desk, reading the tension in the room immediately. Oscar slid the note across the polished surface. Watched Marcus read it. Watched understanding dawn on his weathered face. Kid came to you directly? Marcus's voice carried surprise and professional interest. Ballsy. 9 years old. Alvin Alexander. Oscar leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. I want everything. Mother's name, medical history, employment, financial records. The sister. And I want a complete profile on the uncle, Warren Brooks, drives for Morton's. Where he lives, where he drinks, who he owes money to, every parking ticket, every complaint filed and dropped. I want to know how many times he breathes per minute. Marcus pulled out his tablet, fingers already moving. Time frame. 24 hours. A slight eyebrow raise, the only sign of surprise Marcus ever showed. This official business or? Personal, Oscar said, the word foreign on his tongue. But that doesn't mean sloppy. Silent operation. No flags, no traces. If Brooks has connections, I want to know before we move. We moving on this? Marcus asked carefully. Oscar met his lieutenant's gaze steadily. A child shouldn't have to hire a criminal to feel safe in his own home. That's not a world I want to keep building. Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition of the man Oscar used to be before the wolf took over completely. I'll have preliminary by morning, full profile by tomorrow night. One more thing. Oscar's voice dropped lower. The boy, Alvin, I want passive surveillance. Make sure he gets home safe tonight. Make sure he stays safe until we handle this. Marcus nodded, understanding the unspoken command. On it. As Marcus left, Oscar pulled the note from his pocket again, studying the careful handwriting that wobbled with the effort of a child trying to be brave. He noticed what he'd missed before, small indentations in the paper where tears had fallen and dried. Alvin had cried writing this. Had cried and then gathered himself and come to find the most dangerous man he knew. The bruises Oscar had seen on the boy's wrist hadn't been from playing. The cut above his eyebrow hadn't been from falling. The calculated courage, the adult survival instincts, the way he tracked Oscar's schedule to find him alone. These weren't traits children developed in safe homes. Alvin Alexander wasn't exaggerating. If anything, he was probably understating the situation because he'd learned that adults didn't believe children about abuse. Didn't intervene. Didn't help. But Oscar Rosa wasn't most adults. His phone buzzed, Marcus, already working. A text appeared. Initial hit on Warren Brooks. Gambling debts. Assault charges dropped X3. Restraining order filed and withdrawn 2019. You were right to take this seriously. Oscar's jaw tightened. He'd seen this pattern 100 times. Men who hurt those weaker because they could. Who thrived on fear and control. Who the system failed to stop because victims were too scared to testify, too broken to fight back. He typed back. Accelerate timeline. I want options by morning. Then Oscar did something he hadn't done in 15 years. He pulled out the bottom drawer of his desk and retrieved a small photograph he kept hidden beneath false paperwork. Maria's graduation photo. She was smiling, cap askew, eyes bright with hope for a future she'd never get to live. I couldn't save you, he whispered to the image. But maybe I can save them. What do you think Oscar should do when he finds out the full truth about Warren Brooks? Would you trust a man like Oscar Rosa to deliver justice? Or is he too dangerous to involve in something like this? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The wolf was waking up. But this time, it had a different kind of prey in mind. The preliminary report arrived at 6:47 a.m., delivered by Marcus himself rather than transmitted electronically. Oscar had been awake for hours, watching dawn break over the city from his penthouse office, coffee untouched and growing cold on his desk. Some nights, sleep felt like surrender, and tonight had been one of them. Marcus dropped a manila folder on the desk with the weight of a body hitting concrete. Warren Michael Brooks, 38. You're going to want to read this sitting down. Oscar was already sitting, but he understood the sentiment. He opened the folder. Warren Brooks, truck driver for Morton's Logistics. $47,000 in gambling debts across 3 establishments. 2 DUIs. Assault charges filed 4 times, twice by girlfriends, once by a bar patron, once by Alvin's mother, Rebecca Alexander. All charges dropped or dismissed due to witness recantation. The photograph showed a man with thinning hair, a beer gut poorly concealed under a stained work shirt, and eyes that held the particular meanness of someone who enjoyed hurting those who couldn't fight back. Not a hardened criminal, just a coward with fists and access to vulnerable people. Oscar's jaw tightened as he continued reading. Rebecca Alexander, 34. Single mother. Diagnosed with lupus, currently unmedicated due to lack of insurance. Employment history spotty, fired from last 2 jobs for excessive absences. Translation: too sick or too beaten to show up. Alvin Alexander, 9. Honor roll student despite missing 23 days last semester. School counselor's notes flagged concerning bruises, but investigation closed after Warren claimed the boy falls a lot playing basketball. Sienna Alexander, 5. Kindergarten teacher reported selective mutism and regression in social skills. No formal investigation opened. Marcus leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Brooks moved in with Rebecca 18 months ago. Emergency room visits for her increased 340% since then. Alvin's declined. Kids stopped going even when hurt. Learned it draws attention. Financial? Oscar asked, voice dangerously calm. Rebecca's barely surviving. Late on rent 4 months running. Landlord's been flexible because Brooks does odd jobs for the building. Probably the only reason they haven't been evicted. Marcus paused. Brooks controls all the money. She doesn't even have access to her own accounts anymore. Classic pattern. Isolate. Control. Dominate. Make them dependent, then make them suffer. Oscar closed the folder carefully, as if it might detonate. The gambling debts. Who holds them? Couple independent bookies, nothing major. But here's where it gets interesting. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed Oscar a surveillance photo. This was taken 3 nights ago outside Lucky's bar. That's Brooks' meeting with Tony Scarpetti. Oscar's eyes narrowed. Scarpetti ran a loan sharking operation that occasionally intersected with Oscar's territory, though they maintained professional distance. He's borrowing from Tony now. Looks like. Which means Brooks is desperate enough to involve people who break kneecaps for late payments. How much time before Tony collects? Week. Maybe 2. Oscar stood, walking to the window. The city stretched below, waking to another day of ordinary violence and quiet suffering. Somewhere down there, Alvin Alexander was probably getting his sister ready for school, making breakfast his mother was too medicated or too injured to prepare, carrying adult responsibilities on 9-year-old shoulders. And Oscar remembered. 7 years ago. Different family. Same pattern. A cocktail waitress named Elena Ruiz had approached him at a club, desperate and terrified. Her boyfriend, a low-level dealer who worked adjacent to Oscar's operation, had put her in the hospital twice. The police wouldn't help because her boyfriend had connections. She had nowhere else to turn. Please, she begged. Just make him leave me alone. I don't want him dead. Just gone. Oscar had been in a generous mood that night, high on a successful territorial expansion. He'd agreed. Sent 2 men to convince the boyfriend to relocate permanently. Clean. Simple. Mercy by his standards. But his men had been sloppy. The boyfriend had connections Oscar hadn't known about, a cousin in a rival organization. What should have been a quiet conversation became a statement of disrespect. Suddenly Oscar was managing a territory dispute that claimed 6 lives over 3 weeks. By the time it ended, Elena Ruiz had disappeared, relocated by witness protection, or fled in terror, or buried somewhere Oscar never found out. He tried to help and made everything worse. After that, Oscar stopped accepting personal requests. Business only. Emotions clouded judgment. Mercy invited chaos. But that was before a 9-year-old boy offered him $5 and reminded him what Maria would have wanted. Oscar turned from the window. I want 24-hour surveillance. Every place Brooks goes, every person he talks to, every pattern in his routine. When he pisses, I want to know which urinal. Already on it, Marcus confirmed. He's predictable. Works Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Stops at Lucky's bar most nights, gets home between 8 and 9. Weekends he sleeps till noon, drinks till night, and makes everyone around him miserable. Security at the apartment building? One camera at the front entrance. Hasn't worked in 6 months. Landlord's cheap. No doorman, no real security. Buildings in the east side. Half the residents wouldn't call cops if they heard gunfire. Perfect. Isolated. Vulnerable. Oscar pulled Alvin's note from his pocket one final time, reading the careful handwriting, the wobbling letters, the dried tear stains. Please make my uncle go away. He hurts my mom and my baby sister. We can't tell anyone because he says he'll hurt us worse. 9 words that contained a lifetime of fear. He walked to the fireplace, purely decorative in the modern office but functional when needed. Struck a match. Held the note over the flame. Boss. Marcus's voice carried question, not judgment. Evidence, Oscar said simply. Can't exist. But as the paper caught fire, Oscar recited the words silently, committing every letter to memory. The weight of them. The trust behind them. The debt this child believed $5 could pay. The note curled into ash, but the contract remained absolute. Oscar turned to Marcus, and the man who looked back held no hesitation, no mercy, no doubt. Just cold calculation and the particular focus of a predator selecting prey. Call the crew. Core team only, you, Vincent, and Dimitri. Nobody else. This doesn't exist on any books. What are we calling it? In their world, every operation needed a name. A way to reference it without speaking details. Oscar glanced at the ashes in the fireplace. Guardian. Marcus nodded slowly, understanding blooming. This wasn't business. This was something else entirely. Parameters? Make him disappear. Quietly. No trauma to the family. No evidence. No body that surfaces in 6 months. Oscar's voice held the steel that had built his empire. Warren Brooks needs to vanish so completely that he becomes a ghost story. And it needs to look natural enough that nobody asks questions. Timeline. 72 hours. I want him gone before he hurts them again. Marcus pulled out his tablet, fingers already moving through encrypted contacts. Vincent's good with accidents. Dimitri can handle the cleanup. I'll coordinate surveillance and find the window. One more thing. Oscar met his lieutenant's eyes. After he's gone, I want passive protection on the family. Rotation surveillance. If anyone else comes sniffing around, debt collectors, aggressive landlords, anybody, I want to know immediately. You're going deep on this one, boss. A child shouldn't have to live in fear in his own home, Oscar said quietly. Not when I have the power to stop it. Marcus studied him for a long moment, then nodded with something that might have been respect. I'll set up the board. We'll find the cleanest play. As Marcus left, Oscar poured himself a fresh coffee, his mind already moving through possibilities. Accidents happened. Trucks crashed. Men with gambling debts disappeared when they couldn't pay. The trick was making it look like natural consequences of a dangerous lifestyle rather than orchestrated justice. Warren Brooks didn't know it yet, but he'd already drawn his last breath as a free man. The moment Alvin Alexander handed over that envelope, a countdown began. And Oscar Rosa always kept his contracts. Do you think Oscar's approach is justice, or just revenge in disguise? When is it right for someone to take the law into their own hands? Or is it never justified? Let me know what you think in the comments. The surveillance would begin within hours. The operation would unfold with surgical precision. And Warren Brooks would never see the wolf coming. 68 hours after Alvin Alexander handed Oscar a worn envelope, the pieces fell into place. Warren Brooks followed patterns like most creatures of limited imagination. Same routes, same stops, same vices. Marcus's surveillance team had mapped every predictable movement. The morning stop at Mel's Diner for coffee and cigarettes, the afternoon deliveries through industrial districts, the evening ritual at Lucky's bar where he drank away money he didn't have while complaining about women who didn't appreciate him. He's a creature of habit, Marcus reported on the final planning call, his voice filtered through encrypted comms. Makes him easy to predict. Also makes him easy to manipulate. Vincent Chun, Oscar's specialist in accidental departures, had found the opening. Friday night, Morton's Logistics got a last-minute contract for a weekend delivery. High-value electronics to a warehouse in the industrial park. Needs a driver willing to work overtime for double pay. Brooks always takes overtime. Dmitri added, his Russian accent thick even after 15 years in the States. Man is drowning in debt. He'll bite. Oscar sat in his office, studying the warehouse blueprints spread across his desk. The location was perfect, a legitimate business front that Oscar's organization had acquired 2 years ago for exactly these situations. Isolated, camera-free zones, multiple exit points for cleanup crews, and most importantly, no witnesses who'd ask inconvenient questions. The delivery request goes through his supervisor tomorrow morning, Vincent continued. Looks legitimate. Company letterhead, proper authorization codes, decent payout. Brooks won't question it. And if he does? Oscar asked, testing the plan's weaknesses. Then we have a backup. His bookie at Lucky's offers him a way to clear $10,000 of his debt by doing one simple delivery. Either way, he ends up at the warehouse Friday at 9 p.m. The debts. Oscar's voice remained neutral, clinical. Tony Scarpetti and the other creditors. I've got offers ready to buy them out at 60 cents on the dollar. They'll take it. Brooks is a bad risk anyway. Marcus pulled up financial records on his tablet. Once the debts are purchased, we control the narrative. He owed money to the wrong people, got scared, ran. Oscar nodded slowly. His phone. We clone it Friday afternoon. Send texts to Rebecca saying he's leaving town. Can't handle the pressure anymore. Typical coward exit. Then the phone gets wiped and dumped in a river 3 states away. Pings will show movement out of the city. His truck. Found abandoned at a bus station outside Memphis with a one-way ticket stub to Texas in the glove box. We've got a guy who matches his build, wears similar clothes. Cameras will catch someone who looks like Brooks boarding a Greyhound, but image quality's just poor enough that positive ID is impossible. Dmitri cracked his knuckles, the sound sharp in the quiet room. And the warehouse job itself? Vincent's smile didn't reach his eyes. Clean. Quick. Body goes into industrial acid bath. Takes 12 hours for complete dissolution. Then residue gets mixed into a concrete pour for a new foundation project downtown. He becomes part of the city's infrastructure. Poetic in a way. Oscar stared at the blueprints, seeing not just lines and measurements, but the end of a man's story. Warren Brooks would cease to exist, not with violence that traumatized families or left evidence for investigators, but with the quiet efficiency of a problem being erased. Witnesses at the warehouse? None. Buildings closed for renovation. Our crew handles loading dock access. Security footage shows a driver arriving, unloading, leaving. Except the man who leaves will be our substitute wearing Brooks's jacket. Timeline's tight but manageable. Police investigation? Marcus answered this one. Missing person report filed by Rebecca Alexander after he doesn't come home. Investigation reveals gambling debts, history of instability, recent job stress. Phone records show he texted her saying he was leaving. Ticket stub and truck found out of state. Classic runner profile. Cops will look for maybe 2 weeks, then file it under voluntary disappearance. Happens every day. The plan was surgical. Clean. Almost elegant in its simplicity. Almost too clean. Oscar stood, walking to the window. 3 days ago, a 9-year-old boy had trusted him with $5 and a desperate plea. Had looked at him with eyes that still believed in the possibility of rescue, of justice, of a world where children didn't have to negotiate with criminals for basic safety. Collateral? Oscar asked quietly. None, Vincent confirmed. Rebecca and the kids think he abandoned them. Better than knowing the truth. Alvin never gets connected to this. Clean break. They get to move forward without him and without guilt. Oscar turned from the window. Execute it. Friday night. No deviations from the plan. No witnesses. No mistakes. Marcus nodded. You want to observe? Oscar shouldn't. Hands-on oversight was for amateurs, for bosses who didn't trust their crews. But something about this operation demanded his presence. Perhaps because it wasn't business. Perhaps because he needed to look Warren Brooks in the eyes and see the man who'd made a child save lunch money to hire a criminal. I'll be there. South Side, blacked out SUV. I want visual confirmation before disposal. Understood. Friday, 8:47 p.m. Oscar sat in the back of his Mercedes SUV. Windows tinted so dark the interior was nearly invisible from outside. The warehouse district stretched before him, a maze of corrugated metal and broken streetlights where legitimate business ended and gray market operations thrived. His driver, silent and professional, kept the engine running. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, tablet showing multiple camera feeds, angles covering every approach to the target warehouse. He's 2 minutes out, Marcus reported. Took the bait without hesitation. Supervisor said Brooks was practically salivating at the overtime pay. Oscar said nothing, watching the empty street with the patience of a predator. In his pocket, his phone buzzed. A text from one of the surveillance units watching Alvin's apartment. Kids are safe. Mother asleep. Alvin doing homework. All clear. At 8:51 p.m., headlights swept across the intersection. A Morton's Logistics truck, dented, unwashed, driven by a man who saw it as just another job rather than his final destination. Warren Brooks pulled into the warehouse loading dock, right on schedule. Through Oscar's binoculars, he watched Brooks climb out of the cab. The swagger of a man who thought he controlled his world, who believed his fists and threats made him powerful. He wore a stained work shirt, jeans riding low under his gut, a cigarette dangling from his lips. This was the man who made Alvin Alexander afraid to sleep at night. Vincent appeared in the loading dock doorway, clipboard in hand, playing the role of warehouse supervisor. Professional, efficient, utterly unremarkable. He gestured for Brooks to back the truck up to the bay doors. Brooks complied, the truck beeping as it reversed. "He's inside the kill box," Marcus said quietly. Oscar watched through the binoculars as Brooks climbed out again, stretching, completely unaware. Vincent pointed toward the warehouse interior, explaining something about where to position the shipment. Brooks nodded, following him inside. The bay doors closed behind them with mechanical precision. 60 seconds passed. Then 90. Oscar's face remained unreadable, a mask of stone that revealed nothing of the calculation beneath. He wasn't enjoying this. Wasn't savoring it. This was necessity. Mathematics. The removal of a variable that created suffering. This was what justice looked like when the system failed. At the 90-second mark, Vincent emerged alone, walking calmly to a black sedan parked near the rear exit. He climbed in. The sedan drove away at precisely the speed limit, nothing suspicious, nothing memorable. Inside the warehouse, Dimitri and his cleanup crew were already working. Warren Brooks had asked what the job entailed, probably complained about the setup, maybe even started to sense something wrong. But by then, it was already over. A silenced weapon, a body bag, industrial chemicals that would erase DNA, dental records, fingerprints, everything that made Warren Brooks identifiable. By morning, he'd be molecules. By next week, concrete. Phase 1 complete, Marcus confirmed. Cleanup crew estimates 4 hours for full dissolution. Substitute driver deploys at 10:15 p.m. Parks the truck at the bus station, leaves the planted evidence, disappears. Phone starts pinging toward Memphis at 10:30. Oscar lowered the binoculars. And the debts? Purchased 2 hours ago. Tony Scarpetti's already spreading word that Brooks skipped town owing him money. Street reputation does the rest. Everyone assumes he ran from debts and consequences. Story sells itself. The SUV pulled away from the warehouse district, sliding back into normal traffic patterns. Just another vehicle in the city's nighttime flow. Oscar stared out the window, watching streetlights blur past. Warren Brooks was gone. Erased. As if he'd never existed. And somewhere across the city, Alvin Alexander was finishing his homework, unaware that the monster under his bed had just been eliminated by a different kind of monster. The question was, which monster was he? Was this justice or just murder with good intentions? Where's the line between protecting the innocent and becoming the thing you're fighting against? Drop your thoughts below. By morning, Rebecca Alexander would wake to a text message that would change everything. And Oscar Rosa would begin learning that eliminating a threat was the easy part. Rebuilding what it destroyed. That was the real challenge. Day 1, Saturday morning. Rebecca Alexander woke to sunlight streaming through curtains that hadn't been closed properly and 3 missed calls from Warren's supervisor. Her medication fog made everything feel distant, wrapped in cotton, but the notification on Warren's phone, the one he'd left on the kitchen counter, cut through clearly enough. "I can't do this anymore. The debts, the pressure, it's too much. I'm leaving. Don't try to find me. You're better off without me anyway. W." She read it twice, then 3 times, waiting for the relief to feel like relief instead of another kind of fear. Alvin found her in the kitchen, still staring at the phone, Sienna clinging to her leg. "Mom, what's wrong?" Rebecca looked at her son, her too old, too careful son, and something cracked in her chest. "Uncle Warren left. He's not coming back." She watched Alvin's face, waiting for tears or questions or the reaction a 9-year-old should have. Instead, he just nodded slowly, processing the information with that unsettling maturity that made her wonder what exactly her children had witnessed while she'd been too medicated, too sick, too broken to protect them. "Is that okay?" Alvin asked carefully. Rebecca pulled him close, Sienna still attached to her other side. "Yeah, baby. Yeah, I think it might be." For the first time in 18 months, She locked the apartment door without fear of what would happen when it opened again. Day 3, Monday afternoon. The apartment superintendent, Mr. Kowalski, knocked with the urgency of a man who discovered a problem that couldn't be ignored. Rebecca answered, exhaustion making her movements slow. Ms. Alexander, I gotta replace your locks. All of them. He was already pulling tools from his belt. Fire inspection found defects, liability issue. Buildings covering the cost, but I need access today. She blinked. All the locks. Yeah, front door, bedroom doors, even the windows got new safety latches. Insurance companies being real particular after that incident 2 buildings over. He was already working, not waiting for permission. You won't even notice the difference, except these are higher quality. Better security. By the time he finished, Rebecca had keys to locks that actually worked, deadbolts that engaged smoothly, and window latches that didn't stick. She tested the front door twice, marveling at the solid click of real security. Alvin watched from the hallway, something unreadable in his eyes. Day 7, the following Monday. The envelope arrived in Rebecca's mailbox with no return address. Inside, information about a clinical trial for lupus patients at City General Hospital and a voucher for a full year of treatment, medication, lab work, specialist appointments, completely covered. I don't understand, Rebecca told the clinic coordinator over the phone, her voice shaking. Why was I selected? The program identifies patients who've fallen through insurance gaps. You fit the criteria perfectly. The pharmaceutical company covers everything. It's legitimate, I promise. Clearly for the first time in months. She could see what her children had been carrying while she'd been drowning. Day 14, 2 weeks after. The letter came to Alvin's school on official letterhead from the Riverside Educational Foundation, an organization Alvin's principal had to Google because she'd never heard of it. Alvin Alexander has been selected for a merit scholarship. Principal Morrison read aloud to Rebecca in her office, clearly as confused as Rebecca felt. Full coverage of educational materials, tutoring services, and enrichment programs through high school. There's even a college fund component that begins accruing interest immediately. But why Alvin? Rebecca's hands twisted in her lap. He's a good student, but... According to this, the foundation identifies students who show exceptional resilience in difficult circumstances. Morrison looked up, her expression gentle. Alvin's teachers have noted his maturity and responsibility. Someone clearly thought he deserved support. Rebecca signed the paperwork in a daze, watching her son's carefully neutral expression. He'd learned to not hope for good things, she realized. Learned that wanting something made it hurt more when it was taken away. This is good, baby, she told him, cupping his face. You deserve good things. Alvin nodded, but his eyes held questions he wasn't ready to ask. Day 17, Thursday evening. Oscar sat in his office, reviewing the surveillance reports that arrived daily. Photographs of Alvin walking to school, looking less hunched, less burdened. Rebecca emerging from the clinic with medication bags, her movements already steadier. Sienna playing in the park, actually playing instead of clinging silently to her mother. The scholarship fund is active, Marcus reported. Tutoring starts next week. The clinic says Rebecca's responding well to treatment. They're optimistic about long-term management. And the building? Landlord mysteriously came into some money to do safety upgrades. New locks, better lighting in the hallways, repairs that have been ignored for years. Our people made sure the Alexander apartment got priority. Oscar nodded, still studying the photographs. Local protection? Rotation surveillance. 3-man teams, 8-hour shifts. Neighborhood dealers have been informed that this family is off limits. Anyone causes problems, they answer to you personally. Word spreading. They're in a protective bubble they don't even know exists. No one touches them. Not ever. Oscar's voice carried the weight of absolute law. I want that message carved into every street-level operation in a 5-block radius. Anyone who even looks at them wrong gets reminded who they belong to. Marcus made notes. Consider it done. Though, boss, you're allocating serious resources to this. The other operations are running fine. Oscar cut him off. This isn't negotiable. The Alexander family is a permanent protected asset. Budget accordingly. After Marcus left, Oscar did something he'd promised himself he wouldn't do. He ordered his driver to take him to the east side. Day 21, 3 weeks after. The black Mercedes moved through the neighborhood like a shark in shallow water. Expensive, powerful, completely out of place. Oscar sat in the back, watching the street where the Alexander family lived. It was dinner time. Through lit windows, he could see ordinary lives unfolding. Families eating, children doing homework, the mundane rituals of survival and hope. The Alexander apartment was on the 2nd floor. Oscar watched the windows, saw movement inside. Rebecca in the kitchen, moving with more energy than the surveillance photos had shown. Sienna playing with dolls. And Alvin, sitting at a small table, bent over homework with focus that shouldn't belong to a child who'd just lost his primary threat. The boy knew. Maybe not the details, not the how or the where. But children who'd learned to survive knew when patterns changed. When danger disappeared. When invisible forces started working in their favor. Alvin looked up suddenly, directly at the street, as if he could feel Oscar's gaze through tinted windows and distance and the veil of anonymity. For a long moment, the child and the crime boss locked eyes across an impossible divide. Then Alvin returned to his homework, but his shoulders had relaxed slightly. Oscar's driver waited for instructions. "Sir, circle back through in an hour. Then I want regular passes, Tuesday and Friday evenings. Vary the times, but I want visual confirmation they're safe." "Personal surveillance, boss?" "Personal investment," Oscar corrected. Over the next 2 weeks, it became routine. Oscar would have dinner at restaurants in the neighborhood, nothing obvious, nothing that drew attention. Just a well-dressed man eating alone, reading a newspaper, occasionally glancing out the window toward a second-floor apartment where a family was slowly learning to breathe again. Sometimes he'd drive past the school at pickup time, watching Alvin walk home with other children, no longer isolated, no longer carrying the weight of adult terror on child shoulders. And sometimes, late at night when the city slept and his empire ran itself, Oscar would sit in his office and wonder when exactly protecting a family had become more important than protecting territory. Marcus noticed, of course. "You're getting attached." Oscar didn't deny it. "Make sure the protection detail stays sharp. I want quarterly reviews of their situation, housing, healthcare, education, safety. Any gaps, fill them. Any threats, eliminate them. You're building a different kind of empire here, boss." Oscar looked at the photograph of Alvin from that first day. The worn envelope, the desperate courage, the $5 that had bought something neither of them understood yet. "Maybe," he said quietly. "Or maybe I'm just remembering what I should have built all along. If you found out someone powerful was secretly protecting your family like this, would you feel grateful or terrified? Where's the line between guardian and controller? Let me know what you think." The protection was complete. The family was healing. But Oscar was about to discover that his involvement couldn't remain invisible forever. And when Alvin finally confronted him about the truth, everything would change. 6 weeks after the park, Alvin Alexander had learned to recognize patterns the way other children recognized cartoon characters. When good things happened once, it was luck. Twice was coincidence. But when your entire life transformed in coordinated precision, that was something else entirely. New locks, free medication, scholarship money, rent that suddenly dropped by $300 because the landlord claimed there was a building-wide adjustment. A tutor who appeared at school offering free sessions because Alvin had been randomly selected for an enrichment program. Random. Sure. The black Mercedes had been circling his street for 3 weeks. Different times, never obvious, but Alvin noticed things other people missed. That's how you survived when survival mattered. And he recognized that car from the park, even with tinted windows that hid its passenger. So when Alvin walked out of Riverside Elementary on a Thursday afternoon and saw Oscar Rosa leaning against a park bench across the street, no bodyguards, no Mercedes, just him in an expensive suit that cost more than 3 months of his mother's old salary, he wasn't surprised. He was relieved, because not knowing was worse than knowing, and Alvin needed to know. He crossed the street with the careful deliberation of a child who'd learned to measure every step. Other kids streamed past, oblivious, chattering about playground drama and weekend plans. Alvin's world had never been that simple. Oscar watched him approach, his expression unreadable. Up close, in daylight, he looked different than he had in the park. Still dangerous, still powerful, but somehow more human. Less like the boogeyman from whispered stories, and more like, Alvin didn't know what. A force of nature, maybe. Something inevitable. "Mr. Rosa," Alvin said, stopping 3 feet away. "Always maintain distance. Always leave room to run." "Alvin." Oscar's voice was exactly as he remembered, deep, controlled, carrying weight beyond words. "Walk with me." It wasn't really a question, but Alvin appreciated that he'd asked anyway. He nodded. They walked along the fence line of the school playground, an unlikely pair, the crime boss and the 9-year-old who'd hired him. For a long moment, neither spoke. Around them, the ordinary chaos of dismissal time continued. Parents collecting children, buses loading, teachers shepherding students to waiting cars. "You've been following us," Alvin said finally. "Not an accusation. Just a fact. Oscar glanced down at him, something like respect flickering in his dark eyes. Observant. I notice things. I can see that. Another silence, this one heavier. Alvin's heart hammered against his ribs, but he kept his voice steady. The locks. The medication for my mom. The scholarship. The tutor. The rent. He stopped walking, turned to face Oscar directly. That was all you, wasn't it? Oscar stopped too, hands in his pockets, studying Alvin with an intensity that should have been frightening, but somehow wasn't. What makes you think that? Because everything good that's happened started exactly 1 week after I gave you that envelope. Alvin's voice cracked slightly, 9 years old showing through the armor. And my uncle disappeared the same weekend. I'm not stupid. No, Oscar agreed quietly. You're not. Where is he? The question Alvin had been afraid to ask, afraid to know the answer to, but unable to stop wondering. Oscar crouched down then, bringing himself to Alvin's eye level. His expression was serious but not unkind. Gone. Permanently. He'll never hurt your family again. That's all you need to know. Alvin searched Oscar's face, looking for, what? Regret, pride, violence. He found only certainty. Absolute, unshakable certainty that Warren Brooks was erased from existence. And Alvin felt nothing but relief. Does that make me bad? He wondered. Should I feel guilty that I'm glad? Why are you helping us? The question burst out before Alvin could stop it. The envelope, that was just for making him go away. But you're doing all this other stuff. The medicine, the money, everything. Why? Oscar was quiet for a long moment, and Alvin watched emotions flicker across his face too quickly to identify. Finally, the crime boss spoke, his voice softer than Alvin had ever heard it. Because you paid for it, and I never break my word. But I only paid $5. You paid everything you had. Oscar stood, looking down at Alvin with something that might have been sadness. That's worth more than you know. It was an answer, but not the real answer. Alvin could feel the weight of things unsaid, could sense the deeper truth hiding beneath careful words. But he was 9 years old, and some truths were too heavy to demand. Are you going to keep helping us? Alvin asked instead. Oscar nodded once. Yes. Why? This time Oscar smiled, small, barely there, but real. Because watching your family heal reminds me that some things can still be fixed, even by someone like me. 2 weeks later, the woman who knocked on their apartment door introduced herself as Catherine Liu, private tutor, sent by the Riverside Educational Foundation. She was young, energetic, and carried a bag full of advanced textbooks that made Alvin's eyes widen. Your teachers say you're working 2 grade levels ahead in math, she told him, settling at their kitchen table while Rebecca made tea. I'm here to make sure you stay challenged. 3 sessions a week. Free. Foundation sponsored. Catherine explained with a smile that suggested she didn't question where the money came from, only that it existed. Alvin excelled. For the first time in his life, school felt like possibility instead of survival. 1 week after that, Rebecca came home from her clinic appointment with news that made her cry. They offered me a job, she told Alvin and Sienna, gathering them close. Medical records administration. Remote work. Full benefits. It's more money than I've ever made, and I can do it from home. How? Alvin asked, though he already suspected the answer. They said the clinic is expanding their administrative team, and my experience from before I got sick makes me perfect for it. It's a miracle, baby. A real miracle. Alvin nodded, accepting the explanation his mother needed to believe. But he knew the truth. Miracles had names, and this one drove a black Mercedes and never broke his word. The following month, Mr. Kowalski knocked again, this time with paperwork. Good news, Ms. Alexander. Building ownership changed hands. Some investment company bought the property. New management's offering long-term tenants a rent reduction for the next 3 years. Something about stabilizing the community. Rebecca stared at the new lease agreement. Rent cut by 40%. Security deposit waived. First month free. I don't understand, she whispered. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth, Kowalski advised. Sign before they change their minds. She signed. That night, after Sienna fell asleep and Rebecca was absorbed in her new remote training, Alvin stood at the window looking down at the street. The black Mercedes wasn't there. It never was anymore, or at least he couldn't see it. But he felt watched, protected, like an invisible hand had reached down and rearranged the pieces of their broken life into something that almost resembled whole. His mother was healing. The medication was working. She smiled now, real smiles instead of the exhausted grimaces she'd worn for 18 months. Sienna was talking again, actually using words instead of just clinging and crying. And Alvin could sleep without listening for footsteps, without planning escape routes, without calculating how fast he could get Sienna to safety. They were healing. But the question remained, burning in Alvin's chest like a coal he couldn't smother. Why really? Oscar Rosa didn't owe them anything beyond removing Warren Brooks. The $5 had been a child's desperation, not a real contract. Yet this powerful, dangerous man had rebuilt their entire lives with the same precision he probably used to destroy his enemies. What did that make him? Hero? Villain? Something in between. And what did it make Alvin, who'd set this all in motion with a worn envelope and courage born from having nothing left to lose? 3 months after the park. Alvin was leaving the library after a tutoring session when he saw the Mercedes again, parked a block away. This time, the back window rolled down halfway, and Oscar's face appeared in the gap, deliberate, visible, an invitation. Alvin looked around. No one watching. No one who cared about a kid walking toward an expensive car. He approached slowly, stopping at a respectful distance. Your grades improved, Oscar said. Not a question. Catherine's a good tutor. Your mother's health? Better. She's working again. From home. Oscar nodded, satisfied. Good. Silence stretched between them, comfortable somehow despite its weight. I still don't understand why, Alvin said quietly. Not really. Oscar's expression shifted, something vulnerable breaking through the armor he wore. When I was young, I had a sister, Maria. Someone hurt her, and I couldn't save her because I was too focused on building power instead of using it for the right things. He paused, and Alvin saw genuine pain in his eyes. You reminded me of what I should have been protecting all along. That's why. Alvin absorbed this, piecing together the man behind the reputation. I'm sorry about your sister. Me too. Oscar's voice was rough. But maybe helping you heal helps her memory too. Makes the power worth something. Is it working? Oscar smiled then, sad but genuine. Yeah, kid. I think it might be. The window rolled up. The Mercedes pulled away. And Alvin stood on the sidewalk, understanding finally settling in his chest. Oscar Rosa hadn't just saved them. They'd somehow saved him too. Do you think Oscar is really changing, or is he just finding new ways to control people? Can someone who's done terrible things actually redeem themselves, or does the past always define us? Tell me what you think. The healing would continue. The protection would hold. But the bond between them was about to deepen in ways neither could predict. Because some debts couldn't be repaid with money, only with trust, time, and the fragile hope that broken things could be made whole again. 5 months after the park. Marcus Webb noticed the change first, the way a longtime lieutenant notices when his boss's attention shifts from razor-sharp to somewhere else entirely. You're distracted, Marcus said, dropping the quarterly reports on Oscar's desk. Numbers that should have commanded immediate attention sat ignored while Oscar stared out the window at a city he'd spent decades conquering. The North Side shipment? Oscar asked, not turning around. Handled. The dispute with Castellano's crew. Resolved. The federal investigation into our waterfront operations? Our lawyers have it contained. Oscar finally turned, and Marcus saw something in his boss's eyes he'd never seen before, distance. Not weakness, not fear, but a kind of philosophical detachment that didn't belong in their world. What's your point? My point is you're running the empire on autopilot. 6 months ago, you would have personally overseen the Castellano negotiation. Now you're letting Vincent handle it. Vincent's capable. That's not the issue. Marcus sat down uninvited, a liberty only 15 years of loyalty earned. The men are talking, saying you've gone soft, that whatever happened with that East Side family has you distracted. Oscar's expression hardened slightly, a flash of the old wolf. Let them talk. Results speak louder than rumors. Are we losing territory? No. Losing revenue? No. Then what's the problem? Marcus studied his boss carefully. The problem is you're not invested anymore. You're going through the motions. And in our world, the second you stop caring about power is the second someone takes it from you. Oscar returned to the window, watching the city lights flicker to life as dusk settled. Maybe I'm just realizing there are things more important than power. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Boss, Marcus said carefully, whatever you're doing with that family, it's changing you. Not saying it's bad, just saying it's noticeable. Noted. Oscar's tone indicated the conversation was over. Anything else? Marcus left without another word, but the warning lingered like smoke. That evening, Riverside Elementary School. The school auditorium smelled like old books and industrial cleaner, packed with parents wielding cameras and squirming siblings waiting for the academic awards ceremony to end. Oscar sat in the back row, wearing a plain jacket instead of his usual tailored suits, a baseball cap pulled low, blending into the crowd of ordinary people celebrating ordinary achievements. On stage, Principal Morrison was announcing the honor roll. Oscar watched as name after name was called, children walking up to receive certificates while parents applauded and beamed with pride. Alvin Alexander, highest honors. Oscar sat forward slightly as Alvin crossed the stage, accepting his certificate with the quiet dignity that characterized everything the boy did. No showboating, no excessive smiles, just a calm nod of acknowledgement before returning to his seat. Rebecca sat in the third row, Sienna on her lap, both of them glowing. Rebecca looked transformed, healthier, stronger, actually present in a way she hadn't been able to be months ago. She was crying happy tears, the kind mothers cried when their children succeeded despite everything trying to break them. Oscar felt something tighten in his chest. Pride, satisfaction, something dangerously close to joy. He had no right to feel this. He was the architect of violence, not the creator of wholeness. Yet watching Alvin collect that certificate felt more meaningful than any territory gained or rival eliminated. After the ceremony, Oscar waited until the crowd thinned before slipping out through the side exit. He'd seen what he needed to see, confirmation that his investment was yielding returns measured in something more valuable than money. In the parking lot, he sat in his car and did something he hadn't done in years. He smiled. Actually smiled, alone in the dark, for no reason except a 9-year-old's academic achievement. Marcus was right. He was changing. The question was whether that change would destroy him or save him. The next morning, headquarters. Vincent and Dimitri were waiting in Oscar's office when he arrived, their expressions carefully neutral in that way that meant they'd been discussing him. Gentlemen, Oscar settled behind his desk, noting the way they exchanged glances. Problem. No problem, boss, Vincent said. Just concern. About. Dimitri, never one for subtlety, cut to the point. You're spending a lot of time on East Side. The Castellano situation could have gone bad if Vincent hadn't been aggressive. You would have negotiated softer, yeah? Oscar's eyes narrowed. You questioning my judgment? We're questioning your focus, Vincent clarified. That family, the kid who came to you in the park, you've made them a priority over business. Men are noticing, wondering if the wolf still has teeth. For a long moment, Oscar said nothing. Then, you think I've gone soft? We think you've found something you care about more than the empire, Dimitri said bluntly. And in our world, that's vulnerability. Oscar leaned back in his chair, studying his two most trusted enforcers. You're right. I have found something I care about. And you know what I've realized? Building an empire on fear and violence is easy. Any sociopath with ambition can do it. But using that power to actually fix something broken? That takes more strength than either of you understand. Vincent frowned. Boss, I'm not abandoning the business. I'm not going soft. I'm just remembering why I wanted power in the first place. Oscar's voice carried steel. My sister died because I was too busy conquering territory to protect what mattered. I won't make that mistake again. The Alexander family is under my permanent protection. That doesn't make me weak, it makes me focused. Dimitri and Vincent absorbed this, processing. The men need to know you're still the wolf, Vincent said finally. Then remind them. Oscar's smile was cold. Anyone who mistakes compassion for weakness is welcome to test me. I guarantee they won't enjoy the lesson. After they left, Oscar sat alone in his office, their words echoing. Soft, vulnerable, distracted. Maybe they were right. Maybe caring about Alvin and his family was a liability in a world built on ruthlessness. But for the first time in his life, Oscar didn't care about the strategic disadvantage of having something to lose. That night, dreams. Oscar dreamed of a different life. In it, he was an ordinary man with an ordinary job. No blood on his hands. No empire built on fear. No enemies plotting his downfall. In the dream, he had a family, a wife, children, a house in the suburbs with a yard where kids played. He coached Little League, attended parent-teacher conferences, worried about homework instead of shipments, about soccer practice instead of territory disputes. Maria was alive in this dream, older, married, with children of her own. She hugged him at family dinners and thanked him for being a good brother who'd always protected her. And when Oscar woke, sweating and disoriented in his empty penthouse, the loss of that imaginary life hurt more than any bullet wound he'd ever taken. What would I have been without the violence? He wondered. Who could I have become if I'd made different choices? The questions haunted him through his morning coffee, through his afternoon meetings, through the endless machinery of maintaining an empire he'd stopped wanting. By evening, he found himself driving to the east side again, parking where he could see the Alexander apartment. Lights in the windows. Movement of people living ordinary lives. Alvin doing homework, Sienna playing, Rebecca cooking dinner. Everything he'd never have, and everything he'd made possible for them. Maybe that was enough. Maybe redemption wasn't about becoming a different person. Maybe it was about using who you were to create the life for others that you'd never get to live yourself. 6 months after the park. The envelope arrived at Rebecca's apartment on a Tuesday afternoon, thick, official, from the state nursing board. Rebecca's hands shook as she opened it, Alvin watching from the doorway. Dear Ms. Alexander, we are pleased to inform you that your application to the City General Nursing Program has been accepted. She read it 3 times, each time tears falling faster. Mom. Alvin's voice was cautious. I got in. Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. Baby, I got in. Full scholarship. They're even covering childcare costs during my clinical rotations. It's impossible. But Alvin knew it wasn't impossible. He knew exactly how impossibilities became reality when Oscar Rosa decided something should happen. Rebecca pulled him into a fierce hug. It's a miracle. A real miracle. Everything's been a miracle since Warren left. The medicine, your scholarship, my job, and now this. It's like someone up there is finally watching out for us. Yeah, Alvin said quietly, looking out the window toward where he knew a black Mercedes would be parked, invisible but present. Someone's definitely watching out for us. 2 days later, Oscar sat in his office, reviewing the nursing school acceptance letter that Marcus had secured through carefully applied pressure and strategically placed donations. Rebecca Alexander had the grades, the experience, and the determination. She just needed someone to open the door. Opportunity kept slamming in her face. Marcus entered without knocking. Nursing school's a go. Full ride. She starts in the fall. Good. Oscar filed the paperwork away. What about extended support during her schooling? Stipends arranged. Looks like a nursing board scholarship for single mothers. Completely legitimate, untraceable to us. Oscar nodded, already thinking ahead. Rebecca would need 3 years to complete the program. During that time, the family would need continued protection, continued support, continued. You know you're building a dependency, right? Marcus said. Eventually they'll need to stand on their own. They will, Oscar replied. But not until they're strong enough to stand without falling. Marcus studied him. You've become their guardian angel. Guardian devil, Oscar corrected. Let's not romanticize what I am. But alone in his office later that night, Oscar wondered if the distinctions still mattered. Monster or savior, criminal or protector. Maybe the labels meant less than the actions. Maybe who you'd been mattered less than what you chose to do with the power you'd earned through being that person. His empire still stood. His reputation still terrified. But somewhere in the past 6 months, Oscar Rosa had discovered that the most powerful thing he could do wasn't taking life. It was giving someone the chance to rebuild theirs. Can someone who's built their entire life on violence really change? Or is Oscar just fooling himself? Is he helping this family or creating a new kind of dependency? Share your thoughts. The transformation was nearly complete. But the final test was coming, when Alvin would ask the question Oscar had been avoiding. And the answer would determine whether redemption was real or just another lie powerful men told themselves. 7 months after the park, Oscar sat across from Marcus in a corner booth at Salvatore's, a restaurant that served as neutral ground for conversations that couldn't happen in offices with ears and recording devices. The dinner crowd provided cover, ambient noise that swallowed secrets. Marcus had been unusually quiet through the meal, watching Oscar with the analytical gaze of someone trying to solve a complex problem. Finally, he set down his fork. You going to tell me what's really going on, or do I keep pretending I don't see it? Oscar took a slow sip of wine, considering. In their world, vulnerability was currency you couldn't afford to spend. But Marcus had earned honesty through 15 years of loyalty and discretion. That boy, Oscar said quietly. Alvin. When he handed me that envelope, it was like getting hit with something I'd forgotten existed. What's that? Purpose beyond power. Oscar stared into his wine glass, seeing reflections of a life he'd stopped examining years ago. I've spent 25 years building an empire, destroying anyone who threatened it, convincing myself that control was the same thing as meaning. And then this 9-year-old walks up to me with $5 and reminds me that some things actually matter. Marcus leaned back, processing. You're talking about redemption. I'm talking about remembering I'm human. Oscar's voice carried weight. After Maria died, I buried everything that made me vulnerable. Love, compassion, hope, all liabilities in our world. I became the wolf completely. And it worked. I'm untouchable, feared, successful by every metric that matters. But I'm empty. The admission came out raw, unfiltered. Every morning I wake up in a penthouse worth millions, surrounded by luxury I'll never enjoy, protected by people who fear me instead of caring about me. And I realized I've spent decades surviving without actually living. Marcus absorbed this, his expression unreadable. And the Alexander family changed that? Helping them change that. Oscar met his lieutenant's gaze. For the first time in my adult life, I'm using my power to build instead of destroy. Watching that family heal, seeing Alvin excel in school, knowing Rebecca's going to nursing school. It matters in a way territory and revenue never did. That's dangerous thinking in our business. I know. Oscar's smile was bitter. But here's what I've realized. I'm going to die someday. Probably violently. And when I do, what legacy do I leave? A criminal empire that'll fragment within 6 months? A list of enemies and bodies? Or maybe, just maybe, a family that survived because I chose to be something other than a monster for once. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, you know the men think you've lost your edge. Let them think that. Anyone who mistakes compassion for weakness is welcome to make their move. And if they do, Oscar's expression hardened into something cold and final. Then they'll discover the wolf never left. He just found something worth protecting beyond himself. Marcus nodded slowly, something like respect crossing his features. For what it's worth, boss. I think what you're doing for that family. It's the most human thing I've seen you do. Maybe the most human thing any of us do. They finished dinner in companionable silence. Two men who'd built careers on violence, sharing a moment of honesty about what it cost. That same evening, East Side. Alvin sat at the kitchen table, supposedly doing homework, but actually studying the carefully organized notes he'd been keeping for 3 months. Names, dates, coincidences that weren't coincidences. Lock replacement, October 12th mom's medication program, October 19th scholarship notification, November 2nd tutor arrival, November 15th mom's job offer, November 22nd rent reduction, December 1st nursing school acceptance, January 8th. Every significant improvement in their lives, documented. And connecting them all, the black Mercedes that appeared on their street twice a week, always at slightly different times, always parking where it had a clear view of their apartment. Oscar Rosa was watching them, protecting them, orchestrating their lives like a puppet master pulling invisible strings. But why? The question had haunted Alvin for months. The $5 explanation didn't make sense. The I never break my word reasoning felt incomplete. There was something deeper, something Oscar hadn't said. And Alvin needed to know what it was. Rebecca was at an evening class. Sienna was asleep. The apartment was quiet. Alvin made a decision. He grabbed his jacket and headed downstairs. The Mercedes was parked 2 blocks away, exactly where Alvin knew it would be. He approached slowly, heart hammering, trying to project more confidence than he felt. The back window rolled down as he got close, as if Oscar had been expecting him. Alvin. Oscar's voice carried no surprise. It's late for you to be out alone. I know you're watching us. Alvin stopped at the car door, looking directly at the man who'd become a ghost in their lives, present but invisible, powerful but hidden. Every week, sometimes twice a week, you park here and you watch our apartment. Oscar didn't deny it. Does that bother you? I don't know. Alvin's honesty surprised even himself. Everything good that's happened, the medicine, the scholarship, my tutor, mom's job, nursing school, it's all you, isn't it? Not coincidence. Not luck. You. Does it matter how it happened if it helped? Yes, Alvin said firmly. Because I need to know why. The real why. Not though I never break my word, answer you gave me before. The truth. Oscar studied him for a long moment, then gestured to the car door. Get in. Alvin hesitated. Every warning his mother had ever given him about strange cars and dangerous men flashing through his mind. But Oscar Rosa wasn't a stranger anymore. He was something else. Something Alvin didn't have words for yet. He got in. The interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Oscar sat relaxed but alert, the way predators sat, ready to move at any moment but conserving energy. You want the truth? Oscar asked. Please. Oscar was quiet, gathering thoughts or courage or both. Finally, I had a sister, Maria. She was like you, smart, brave, too old for her age because life made her that way. Someone hurt her, and she asked me for help. But I was too busy building my empire to take her seriously. Too focused on power to protect what actually mattered. Alvin listened, understanding dawning. She died because I failed her. Because I chose territory over family, reputation over responsibility. And I've spent 15 years telling myself it didn't matter, that caring about people was weakness. Oscar's voice roughened. Then you showed up with $5 and courage no child should need. And you gave me a chance to do for you what I failed to do for her. So I'm what? Your second chance. No. Oscar met his gaze directly. You're my reminder that I'm still human underneath the monster. That maybe I can use the power I built through violence to create something good. That redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about making better choices in the present. Alvin absorbed this, the weight of it settling in his chest. Are you my guardian angel? Oscar's laugh was short, bitter. I'm the devil who owed you a favor. Don't romanticize what I am, Alvin. I've done terrible things. Hurt people. Destroyed lives. I'm not a good man trying to be better. I'm a bad man trying to do one good thing before I die. But you're still doing it, Alvin said quietly. The good thing. You're still helping us. Because watching your family heal reminds me that some things can be fixed. That despite everything I've broken, I can still build something that matters. They sat in silence, the truth hanging between them, complicated, messy, more honest than any conversation Alvin had ever had with an adult. Finally, Alvin reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something small wrapped in tissue paper. I have something for you, he said, unwrapping it carefully. It was the $5 bill, the one from the envelope. But now it was laminated, preserved behind clear plastic, transformed from desperate currency into something else, a memory, a contract, a symbol. I kept it, Alvin explained. The $5 you gave back to me that day in the park. I got it laminated last month, saved up for my allowance. Oscar stared at the preserved bill, something unreadable crossing his face. I want you to have it, Alvin continued. Because you were right. I paid everything I had that day. But you paid everything too. You paid with your power, your reputation, your time. You paid with caring about people again, which I think costs more than money for someone like you. Oscar took the laminated bill with hands that had ended lives, but now trembled slightly holding this gift from a child. And, Alvin added, his voice cracking slightly, you might need it again someday. When you forget why you're doing this. When the bad things you've done feel heavier than the good. You can look at that and remember there's a kid who doesn't think you're a devil. Who thinks you're the best person who ever helped us. Oscar stared at the $5 bill, preserved, protected, transformed from transaction into testimony. Proof that a moment in a park had changed 2 lives, not just one. Thank you, Oscar said, his voice rough with emotion he no longer tried to hide. I'll keep it safe. I know you will. Alvin opened the car door, preparing to leave. You keep everything safe. That's what you do. Before he got out, Oscar spoke again. Alvin, you know you're never getting rid of me, right? Even when you're grown, even when you don't need protection anymore, I'll still be watching. Still making sure you're okay. Alvin smiled, the first completely unguarded smile Oscar had ever seen from him. Good, because you're never getting rid of us either. We're family now. The weird kind, but still family. He closed the car door and walked back toward his apartment, leaving Oscar alone with a laminated $5 bill and the overwhelming realization that redemption wasn't something you earned. It was something given to you by people who believed you deserved it. Oscar sat in the dark car, staring at the gift in his hands, and felt something he hadn't felt in 25 years. Hope. Do you think Oscar deserves redemption, or is helping one family enough to balance out a lifetime of violence? Can people really change, or do they just find better ways to be who they've always been? Let me know what you think. The truth was out. The bond was sealed. But one final chapter remained, where Oscar would have to decide what legacy he wanted to leave, and Alvin would have to learn that some guardians protected best from the shadows. 8 months after the park. The small velvet box appeared on the Alexander family's doorstep on a Tuesday morning, wrapped in plain brown paper with no return address. Alvin found it before school, his name written in elegant script across the top. Inside the box, nestled in black silk, was a silver key charm on a delicate chain, intricate, beautiful, clearly expensive. The key itself was ornate, with detailed scrollwork that caught the light, but it wasn't meant to open any physical lock. This was symbolic, aspirational. Beneath the charm lay a card, the message written in the same elegant hand. Keys unlock more than doors. Keep unlocking your future. Oh, Alvin held the charm up to the morning light streaming through their kitchen window, watching it spin slowly, casting tiny prismatic reflections across the walls. His mother was still sleeping. Nursing school was exhausting, but she was thriving. Sienna was building something with blocks in the living room, humming quietly to herself. Their life had transformed so completely that sometimes Alvin had to remind himself what it had been like before. Before Oscar. Before the park. Before $5 bought them a future they'd never dared to hope for. He fastened the chain around his neck, feeling the weight of the key settle against his chest. It felt like a promise, like a goodbye. His phone buzzed, an unknown number. "Answer it," something inside him said. "Hello." "Alvin." Oscar's voice, familiar now, carrying warmth Alvin suspected few people ever heard from him. "Did you get the package?" "The key?" "Yeah. It's beautiful." "Good." A pause, heavy with things unsaid. "I need to tell you something." Alvin's chest tightened. He'd learned to read the spaces between Oscar's words, and right now those spaces screamed goodbye. "You're leaving." "I have to." Oscar's voice was steady but regretful. "Things in my world are complicated. People are asking questions about why I'm distracted, where my focus has been. Staying visible near your family puts you at risk. The protection I've built around you only works if no one knows it exists. So you're just disappearing?" "I'm stepping back. The protection remains. Financial support, security measures, everything that's been set up continues. But I can't be present anymore. Can't drive past your street. Can't attend your school events. My visibility has become a liability for you." Alvin felt something crack in his chest. Not quite heartbreak, but close. "Will I ever see you again?" "You won't see me again. Not unless you need me." Oscar's voice softened. "But I'll always be watching, Alvin. Always. You've become important to me. More important than I ever intended. And that means protecting you properly, which requires distance." "I don't want distance," Alvin said, his 9-year-old voice finally cracking with the emotion he'd been holding back. "Your family." "I know." Oscar's breath caught slightly. "And that's exactly why I have to do this. Real family protects you, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts." Tears burned behind Alvin's eyes. "The key, what does it mean?" "It means you have the power to unlock every door that's ever been closed to you. Education, opportunity, future, they're all within reach now. Your mother's getting her nursing degree. You're excelling in school. Sienna's talking again, laughing again. You don't need me standing guard anymore. You just need to keep moving forward. But what if I do need you? Then I'll be there. Absolute certainty. Always. You have my word, and I never break my word. But Alvin, you're stronger than you know. You walked up to a man everyone feared and demanded he help you. That courage didn't come from me. It's always been yours." The silence stretched, both of them holding onto the connection for a few more seconds. "Thank you," Alvin whispered finally. "For everything. For saving us. Thank you for reminding me I was worth saving too." Oscar's voice was rough. "Take care of your family, Alvin. And remember, keys unlock more than doors. Keep opening them." The line went dead. Alvin stood in the kitchen, clutching his phone, the silver key cold against his chest. Outside, the city was waking up, ordinary people heading to ordinary jobs, living ordinary lives that didn't involve crime bosses and desperate deals in parks. But Alvin's life would never be ordinary. It had been touched by something extraordinary, a monster who chose to be a guardian, a devil who saved angels, a man who proved that redemption was real if you wanted it badly enough. He wiped his eyes, squared his shoulders, and went to wake his mother for school. The key caught the light one more time, a tiny promise against his heart. 6 years later, Riverside High School's auditorium was packed for the annual scholarship ceremony. Alvin Alexander, now 15 and tall enough to almost pass for 17, stood at the podium in a suit his mother had bought with her first nursing salary. She sat in the front row, no longer tired, no longer broken. Sienna, 11 now and thriving, sat beside her. Alvin had been asked to speak about perseverance, about overcoming adversity, about the unsung heroes who helped students succeed. His English teacher thought he'd have a unique perspective. She had no idea how right she was. "We like to think success is a solo journey," Alvin began, his voice steady and clear. "That if we work hard enough, want it badly enough, we can achieve anything on our own. But that's not how it works. Not really." He paused, scanning the crowd. Students, parents, teachers, all watching him with varying degrees of attention. Success requires help. Sometimes that help comes from obvious places, parents, teachers, mentors, people who are supposed to guide us. But sometimes, he touched the silver key that still hung around his neck, hidden beneath his shirt but always present. Sometimes help comes from unexpected places, from people who owe you nothing but choose to give you everything. Rebecca dabbed at her eyes, understanding flooding her face. She'd never known the full truth about how their lives had changed, but she'd suspected. Mothers always knew. 6 years ago, my family was drowning. My mom was sick. My little sister wasn't talking. We were trapped in a situation with no way out. And someone helped us. Someone powerful, someone who didn't have to care, but chose to anyway. Alvin's voice strengthened. This person never asked for recognition, never wanted credit. They just fix things. Quietly. Efficiently. They gave my mother access to healthcare that saved her life. They gave me educational opportunities one never would have had. They gave my sister her voice back. They gave us a future. The audience was fully attentive now, leaning forward. I'll never be able to thank this person publicly. They don't want that. But I want everyone here to understand something. There are people in this world who use their power to destroy, and people who use their power to build. Success isn't just about what you achieve, it's about what you do with your power once you have it. He looked directly at his mother. My mom's a registered nurse now. She saves lives every day. That's power used well. My sister wants to be a teacher. That's power used well. And me. He smiled. I'm going to study law. Learn how to protect people who can't protect themselves. That's power used well. But none of it would be possible without someone who looked at a desperate kid with $5 and decided that some debts aren't paid with money. They're paid with action. With protection. With giving a damn when you don't have to. Alvin's hand found the key through his shirt. So to anyone listening who has power, wealth, influence, strength, whatever form it takes, remember that how you use it defines who you are. You can be the monster everyone fears, or you can be the guardian someone remembers for the rest of their life. The applause started slowly, then built. Students stood. Teachers nodded. His mother cried openly, pride and understanding mingling on her face. Alvin stepped down from the podium, his speech complete, his message delivered. Outside, the parking lot. A black Mercedes sat at the far edge of the lot, partially hidden by trees, but with a clear view of the auditorium's main doors. The engine idled quietly, windows tinted so dark the interior was invisible. Inside, Oscar Rosa sat alone, older now, gray threading through his dark hair. The laminated $5 bill sat on the dashboard, his talisman, his reminder, his proof that one choice could echo across years. He'd heard every word through the phone Marcus had planted in the auditorium, a final indulgence, a last moment of connection before truly stepping back. Oscar watched as Alvin emerged from the building, surrounded by congratulating classmates and teachers. The boy, no, young man now, carried himself with confidence that came from knowing he'd survived the worst and come out stronger. Rebecca appeared, pulling Alvin into a fierce hug. Sienna joined them, creating a tableau of a family that had been broken and carefully, deliberately put back together. This, Oscar thought, is what power should look like. Not territory controlled or enemies eliminated. Not wealth accumulated or fear generated. But lives saved. Futures created. Hope restored. He'd built an empire on violence and would die with blood on his hands. Nothing could change that. But in the midst of all that darkness, he'd created one pocket of light. One family that thrived because he'd chosen compassion over cruelty, protection over profit. Maybe that wasn't redemption. Maybe you couldn't balance scales that tipped so heavily toward evil. But it was something. And for a man who'd spent decades believing he was beyond saving, something was more than he'd ever expected. Alvin looked up suddenly, directly at the Mercedes. For a long moment, their eyes met across the distance. The young man who'd been saved and the old criminal who'd done the saving. Alvin's hand went to his chest, to the key, acknowledgement and gratitude in the gesture. Then he smiled, not the guarded smile of a traumatized child, but the open smile of someone who'd learned to hope again. Oscar smiled back, even though Alvin couldn't see it through the tinted windows. Then he put the car in gear and drove away, disappearing into the city he'd once controlled through fear. Now just another shadow watching over one family who'd taught him that monsters could choose to be guardians. The Mercedes vanished around a corner, but the protection remained. Always watching, always ready, always there. Some debts could never be fully repaid, but they could be honored. One choice at a time, one family at a time, one moment of humanity preserved against a lifetime of violence. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is give someone a chance. And sometimes the most powerful thing we can receive is proof that we're worth saving. In the end, maybe that's what redemption really means. Not erasing the past, but choosing to create a better future despite it.
Thanks so much for watching till the end. If this story moved you, you're going to love what's coming next. It's even more surprising and emotional than this one. Go ahead and click the story on your screen right now, and see you in the next story.